स्वदेशी राम। ये जो नंबरिंग होती है ना, जो काउंटडाउन होता है लाल लाइट का, ये दुबई में भी होना चाहिए। दुबई में नहीं है।
क्या?
वहाँ के लोग इतने उतावले नहीं होते।
आधा मिनट का होता होगा इसलिए, और भीड़ भी नहीं लग पाती होगी।
नहीं भीड़ लग जाती है यार। इट्स टाइम टू गेट। हेलो एवरीवन, आई नो आज का दिन वाज नॉट सपोज टू बी दैट हेक्टिक, लेकिन हो गया क्योंकि क्या कर सकते हैं। नॉट अ लॉट ऑफ कॉल्स बट डेफिनेटली अ लॉट ऑफ वर्क डन. So I'm happy. I think one of my hacks for work is to just not be in calls that much, which is super great. That being said, मैं आज एक थ्रेड पढ़ रहा था नोशन के फाउंडर से. सो फॉर दोज ऑफ यू हु नो मी, आई रियली लव टू यूज़ नोशन सिंपली बिकॉज के वो मुझे काफ़ी लिंडी लगता है, काफ़ी फास्ट लगता है. आई थिंक द टीम इज़ रियली ग्रेट एट लाइक शिपिंग प्रोडक्ट्स आउट. On top of that, I think that the way Notion works is pretty cool. Like they have like a very standardized, Twitter presence across all of their teams and so on and so forth. उनकी कहानी थी, which is that how they started out in 2013 and they did not become a viable product until 2020. For 7 years straight, they failed. Can you imagine? 7 महीने तक, क्या आप 7 दिन तक फेल करें तो आपको डिमोटिवेट होने लग जाता है. 7 साल दे वर्कड ऑन द नोशन कोर प्रोडक्ट फॉर 4 years. Oh, I actually said that wrong. They actually worked on the Notion core product 4 times, which is worse. क्योंकि 4 साल में कम से कम आप अपने आपको ये तसल्ली तो दे सकते हैं कि ठीक है, अभी फाइनल प्रोजेक्ट नहीं बना है, फाइनल प्रोडक्ट बन जाएगा तो बहुत बिकेगा. Their product failed 4 times. And they had to come up with new things time and time again. उसका जो co-founder था, like they recently crossed like 100 million users, जिसकी वजह से the co-founder had actually shared like their initial seed pitch deck 2013 का. And उसके अंदर वो एक बात लिखता है जब वो pitch deck share करता है, ये दिखाने के लिए कि how far they've come. वो कहता है कि इसके अंदर जितने आइडियाज़ हैं वो अब हल्के हल्के पनपना शुरू हो गए. The difference is कि pitch deck में लिखा था 15 महीने, actually मैं took 15 साल. So I was like, damn, 15 साल नहीं, मतलब whatever the time difference is from like 2013 to 2024, but you get the idea. कि उसे इतना it took more than a decade. जो उसका originally लग रहा था 15 महीने में हो जाएगा. Which kind of showcases that given enough time, I think you arrive. You arrive and then you realize that all of the fun was in the decade of work that was required to get there. वही कहानियाँ होती हैं, क्योंकि मुझे लगता है जब आप एक बार वहाँ पहुँच जाते हैं, once you arrive at that place, people do not ask you about how life is right now. What they want to know is आपने कैसे किया, how were the days when nothing was working out, how did you conquer, how did you overcome those feelings. तो मुझे यही लगता है कि these days जब हम लोगों का काम होता है सुबह 11 बजे लॉगिन के बाद 8 PM तक लॉग ऑफ, एंड फिर उसके बाद थोड़ा एक्स्ट्रा वर्क, विच आई थिंक इज़ अ पार्ट एंड पार्सल ऑफ अ को-फाउंडर्स लाइफ. ये जो मोमेंट होते हैं, आई थिंक दीज आर गोइंग टू बी द थिंग्स दैट डिफाइन अस. टू मी पर्सनली, आई थिंक दैट नोशन इज़ अ वेरी गुड एग्जाम्पल ऑफ अ कंपनी दैट्स वेरी यूजफुल, but it's not very hyped up. You don't get people talking about Notion with the same fervor as they do about car companies and beauty care products and so on and so forth. I think it's a very boring project, which makes it even more important, because usually boring things are really, really important in life. So I really hope that one day I'm able to write a thread like that. Okay, it took 15 years to reach here, but radar block is here. मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा वो पढ़ के. I really liked it. Maybe it's the romanticism of entrepreneurship in it. It makes you feel very happy कि the naive romanticism you have about entrepreneurship, one day it fulfills itself. And I think at the end of the day, it's not about the money. It's really not about the money. It's more so about seeing like a bigger picture and chasing after it, even if like the world disagrees with you. Just because you feel that the world needs it, or you anticipate that the world is going to need it once they understand like all of the nuances of it. And maybe you don't have it all figured out in like your first go, which is वेरी वेरी अंडरस्टैंडेबल, क्योंकि किसी का भी पहली बार में नहीं पत्ता खुलता है. Everybody takes like 1-2 iterations. So maybe radar block is not in its final form today. Even though like we work really hard, I now see like the drawbacks of the agency model. I definitely know about the upsides as well. हो सकता है आगे जाके it becomes something else. We never know. The thing is, जो specific knowledge है which you will gain in these years, in the decade of war, in the decade of being in the trenches, it's really not about the money. And the reason I'm saying this is because whenever this comes out and you are somebody who's like 21, 22, you're just starting out with a job and you're not very happy with the pay, stick with it. Don't just quit because it's low money. Of course, if you're getting like more money, go for it, but not at the cost of better education. I would actually suggest everybody should at least work once in their life at like a startup. Either open it yourself, either go to a friend's, because the amount of exposure you will get for things that are operational versus things that actually move the needle forward is massive. Probably documentation of the process is not something that will move the needle forward directly, but you know how to bypass the process and do the thing that will make the needle move forward in times of emergency only if you have done that in the past. I don't think a lot of people who work in a really big corporate environment are even cognizant of the fact that not everything that they're doing is actually useful. At least today. Of course, for documentation purposes, big fan of documentation at this point in my life. क्योंकि बहुत बार mess up हो चुका है ज़िंदगी में. तो that's how I like to see it, and maybe my views change by the time this podcast comes out. Oh, sorry, by the time this video comes out. So that's where my mind is at today. Had a good day. I would just love for more days to look like this, with increased physical activity, increased actions, increased thought processes. I really love it when I'm productive. I think that if I die working really hard, I think I would have died a very good death. I had to have no regrets. If you come to me today and you tell me that, in the next 6 months I'm going to pass away, but in those 6 months I will have the most amount of work done that I've ever had, I would take that deal. And the reason for that is, to me, failure is moving away from the path. The path is endless. The path of applying oneself is endless. And wavering away from that path is failure. So my happiness comes from doing what I know is supposed to be done and doing it for like extended periods of time when other people would give up, because that's what I call applying myself. Applying myself is like the best thing I can do, and I love applying myself. So yeah.